lesson is on order of operations. And I'm going to say this is part 1 because I'm not going to do fractions yet. That'll come in part 2. So with order of operations, basically these are the rules you have to follow to solve any math problem. Some people learned this as PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I do GEMDAS. It's really all the same thing. Normally with PEMDAS, the P stands for parentheses. The reason I don't like that is because it's not always just parentheses. Really, it's any type of grouping. So that's why I use a G. A grouping symbol can be parentheses, but it could also be brackets. It could also be absolute value bars, and it could also be a fraction bar. Then we move on to exponents. We learned that in the last lesson. Remember, that's when you have that little number up on the top. It's multiplying times itself. After the exponents, we do any type of multiplying and dividing, and the last thing you should ever do when solving a problem is adding and subtracting. So now let's get into some examples. So remember, every time we solve any math problem, even word problems, we always have to follow those order of operations, which is where we use the acronym GEMDAS. So this is basically like our checklist. We have to look for all the grouping, then all the exponents, and that's how we have to go through each problem. An example might help you to understand. So as we're looking at this problem, the first thing we're looking for is any type of grouping. And remember, those parentheses group those numbers together. So we have to start this problem not on the left side where most people want to. We have to start in that grouping. So inside those parentheses, it says 5 minus 3. Well, we know 5 minus 3 is just 2. But that's the only part of the problem we solved. So everything else we still have to bring down. We still have the 30 minus 3 times 4. In those parentheses, now we have the 2, and then plus 8. Well, we still have a grouping right here. It's touching that 4. And remember earlier we talked about touching. Anytime you see numbers touching, it really just means multiply. So we have to multiply this 4 times 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. And everything else we just bring down for the next step. I still have the 30 and the minus, and the 3, times this whole part right here became 8, and then I have plus 8. So now over here I can cross off the G because my grouping is finished. Now I'm looking for exponents. Do you see any of those exponents in this problem? I don't, so actually I can already cross that off. So now I'm moving on to the MD. Remember, this stands for multiply and divide. In this problem right here, I have a multiply. A lot of people want to do 30 minus 3 first because they're trying to go left to right. But that doesn't follow our checklist. We have to do the multiplying first. So I'm still going to bring this 30 down, minus, instead of 3 times 8, now this becomes 24, and I still have that plus 8. Now that my multiplying and dividing is all done, my last step is any adding and subtracting. Most people try to say, okay, so we have to add before we subtract. That's actually not true. Since they're on the same level, now we move left to right, because add and subtract are next to each other. So from left to right, we actually start with subtracting. 30 minus 24 is 6. Then we still have plus 8. And 6 plus 8, we get 14 for our final solution. Now moving on to another example. This one seems pretty basic, and people just say, oh, okay, 3 times 6 plus 9, and they move left to right. But remember, we still have to follow our checklist. What's kind of nice with this one is I don't see any grouping. I can already check that off. I also don't see any exponents, so I can check that off. But I do see some multiplication. So we have to do the multiplication first. These two numbers right here are multiplying. So 3 times 6, we get 18. But we still have plus 9 times 7. A lot of people want to add 18 plus 9 first. But if we go according to our checklist, M is above the A. So we have to multiply before we add. So we actually have to multiply 9 times 7, which is 63. Then we're going to add that 63 to that 18. When we add those together, 18 plus 63, we get our final answer of 81.